I extend a cordial greeting to all who join this self-knowledge course conference. Today we will see a very interesting topic, the universal and individual Christ. In this conference, we are going to delve into what that universal and individual force known as the Christ is. So, the objective of this conference is for us to understand what the Christ is, and for us to understand how to develop our individual Christ, to unite with that cosmic force, known as the universal Christ. What is the Christ? It is convenient that we understand better what the Christ is, that we do not remain satisfied with just recalling the merely historical issue. Because the Christ is a reality from moment to moment, from second to second. So, the first thing to understand is that the Christ is a force of our consciousness that can be incarnated, and that many beings who have been called great masters, or enlightened ones, have incarnated. Therefore, it is important to open your mind to begin to understand this topic. Because throughout time, we have known Christ through dogmas and beliefs, which have forcibly pigeonholed the Christ into a single master. But in reality, the Christ has been present in the different cultures of all times. We can mention some who throughout the history of this race have incarnated their individual Christ. For example, in China, the Christ was Fu Shi. For the Toltecs, the Christ was Quetzalcoatl. In Japan, Amitabha. For the Greeks the Christ was Heracles, or Hercules for the Romans, and in fact, the 12 labors of Hercules are related to the inner work that the Christ must do on the second and third mountains of initiation. For the Egyptians, Osiris was the Christ. Then, in the Egyptian mysteries, when a master achieved Christification, it was said that he became an Osiris, as in the case of Hermes Trismegistus. Other examples are Buddha, in Nepal, and Krishna in India. These are just some of the many Christs that have existed, but with this, we can see that before Master Jesus there were already Christs, in other cultures and eras, and after Master Jesus, there have also been Christs, like Muhammad, Dante Alighieri, Saint Germain, Cagliostro, Samael, Rabelais, as well as Joan of Arc, Saint Teresa of Avila, etc., since not only man can achieve Christification. They were simply people, who by making an inner work, managed to incarnate their own inner Christ. But, of all of these, perhaps the best known worldwide was Master Jesus of Nazareth. And what made Master Jesus special? What makes him special is that he fulfilled a mission that must be fulfilled in each race, and that only beings of the highest hierarchy can fulfill, and that is, in physical form, represent the cosmic drama of Christification, to show with their lives what every initiate must live in their inner world to achieve their own Christification. These beings do this work to leave this message engraved in the collective memory, and so that the race has a point of reference for those who undertake their own inner path towards awakening. Since we saw the role of the historical Christ, let's see what the universal and individual Christ is in order to understand what that force is, that Jesus, and all these masters incarnated, and that we, also, if we do the inner work that is required, can incarnate. First, let's explain what the universal Christ is. The universal Christ is the army of the voice, and it is convenient to understand that the army of the voice, the army of the word, is fire. And that living fire, that living and philosophical fire that makes chaotic matter fertile, is the cosmic Christ, the Logos, the great word. Thus, we see how that the universal fire is the creator. It is that living and philosophical fire that fertilizes chaotic matter, which can create, or destroy according to its laws. Trying to discover the nature and essence of fire is trying to discover God, whose real presence has always been revealed under the fiery appearance. For example, in the burning bush and in the burning of Sinai following the granting of the Decalogue, are the two manifestations through which God appeared to Moses. Under the figure of a flame-colored being of jasper and sardonicus, sitting on an incandescent and dazzling throne, St. John describes the owner of the universe. Our God is a devouring fire, wrote St. Paul in his epistle to the Hebrews. And this universal fire is that army of the voice, or the army of the word, made up of the self-realized beings that give light to the universe. The Christ is the fire manifested through the creative word of these beings. It is that fire that can create, that can destroy, and that constantly renews nature. He is the Creator. Fire has the power to create atoms and disintegrate them, the power to wield the universal cosmic forces. Fire has the power to unite all atoms and create universes, as well as the power to disintegrate universes. The world is a ball of fire that turns on and off, according to laws. And that Christic force, which is fire, is the one that has the power to create, to renew, or to destroy. It has the power to create the atoms, create the planets, create the galaxies, create the universes, and all the vehicles or bodies in which will inhabit all those divine sparks that come down to this physical manifestation to learn. Sparks that come with the mission of awakening their consciences, to return to the Absolute as individual Christs, in order to become part of the universal Christ, or the army of the Word. So, the universal Christ is the union of all the Christs, of all those awakened, self-realized beings of the galaxy, who have achieved their Christification. These beings that make up the universal Christ are conscious beings who decide to be part of creation, and who, by unfolding themselves and uniting sexually, create the third force, which is fire. Because for the Logos to appear, for it to come to manifestation, the one must unfold into the two, that is, the Father in the Mother, and from the union of the two opposites the third is born, which is fire. And they manifest that fire through the Word to create. That is why we see angels represented in paintings and sculptures using trumpets and swords. The trumpets represent the power to manifest fire through the Word to create by using mantras. And when they are represented with swords, it is representing the manifestation of fire in its destructive form. That fire is the Logos, the Christ, the Word that makes the existence of the universe possible in the dawn of any creation. And the Christ force, that universal fire, is contained in everything created. It is in the germ, in the seed that generates new life. And in the human being, it is contained in our germ, in our seed deposited in our sexual gonads. That is why through sex we can create another living being, but using sex wisely, through superior sex, we can create ourselves internally and develop our inner Christ. Let's see now what is it that have to do all the beings who want to belong to the army of the voice. In the cosmic drama we find the answer. Much has been said about the cosmic drama. Unquestionably this drama is made up of the four Gospels. We have been told that the cosmic drama was brought by the Elohim to earth. The great Lord of Atlantis represented that drama in flesh and bone. The great Kabir Jesus also had to perform the same drama publicly in the Holy Land. Master Jesus had the great task of representing the cosmic drama to show us the way. That is why he said that he was the way, because he came to show us with his life what is the path that every initiate must follow to ascend, to develop the intimate Christ. Thus, represented in the life of Master Jesus, is everything that the initiate must live within himself. All these trials, sufferings, pains, crucifixion, death, and resurrection are part of the interior path towards Christification. It's a difficult path, and that is why many prefer to worship the Master, rather than do the necessary work to achieve what he achieved. On the cross of the martyr of Calvary, the mystery of Christ is defined with a single word consisting of four letters, I-N-R-I, which internally means, ignis, natura, renovator, integram. Fire incessantly renews nature. That is the real meaning of the Christ. But this meaning was hidden from us, just as the true meaning of his life and work has been hidden. And the sexual life of Jesus has also been hidden, and the fact that he did his work for Christification, with his partner Mary Magdalene. And it is thought that he was a celibate, but that is not the case, but rather the secret has been hidden from us for a long time, that it is through sex that we can do this work in ourselves to develop our individual Christ to be part of the universal Christ. The union of all the individual Christs of a galaxy is what is known as the universal Christ. Let's see now how and where we will find the Christ in us. Let us look at the individual Christ. It is said that temptation is fire, and triumph over temptation is light. This lets us see that our fire is trapped in all those things that are a temptation to us, in all the desires of our ego. And when we manage to overcome each of our desires or temptations, we rescue that fire that brings us light. And since the Christ is fire, to come to incarnate the Christic force, we must first release it by learning to deny our desires, not falling into temptation. The intimate Christ is latent in our seed. That fire, which is our essence, which represents the Spirit, the light, is contained in our seminal envelope, in that 97% of consciousness trapped by the ego. We see that the ego expresses itself daily in us through our desires. Fire is the encouragement in us, it is what drives us to do. And since it is currently conditioned by our ego, we always have the mood and the encouragement for doing the things of the ego, for laziness, for watching TV, for being on the cell phone, for gossiping, for fighting, for fornicating, for going out drinking, etc. But, on the other hand, we have no encouragement for the things of our being, for the things that can lead us to awaken our consciousness. To release that fire, or encouragement, which is that Christ in us, we must begin to deny our desires, which is the same as denying ourselves. This is what Master Jesus referred to, when he told his disciples that if someone wanted to follow the Christ, they had to deny themselves. And we deny ourselves when we deny the egoic desires that we feel in every moment. We must know that, if we do not deny our desires, we will forever be slaves of desire, and we will always continue repeating the same mistakes. On the other hand, if we deny ourselves the desire, if we don't fall into temptation, we will rescue the light, which is wisdom, and we will rescue the Spirit. And then, we will begin to have encouragement, but now for the things of our being, to meditate, to eliminate our negative ways of being, to transmute our sexual energy, and to teach others this knowledge. So, it is important to understand that the development of our individual Christ will occur through the practice of the three factors of the revolution of consciousness. With the practice of psychological death, is how we are going to deny our desires, to release the fire trapped in the psychological self. Through self-observation from moment to moment, we will observe the different eyes that manifest themselves in us as different desires in our daily lives. We will judge them in order to understand them, and we will eliminate them with the help of our particular Divine Mother. Thus, we release the fire, the essence, and thus, we rescue the light, and recover the encouragement for consciousness. It is important that we understand that the Christ force is that fire that is contained in our sexual energy. That is why when we spill our sexual energy, we spill the Christ energy, and betray our inner Christ, hence the importance of achieving chastity. So, through the birth factor, we are going to take that fire that we have recovered with psychological death, and we are going to fuse it into our spinal cord. We are going to make it go up our spine, through the practice of superior sex, to create our internal bodies with it. And through the third factor, the factor of sacrifice, we will develop love for our inner work and for humanity, delivering this knowledge to everyone, in its pure form. So that everyone has the tools to also do this work, since one of the main functions of the Christ is to consciously sacrifice himself for humanity, so that they can find the way. Now, at what moment is the Christ born in us? As we saw in Conference 10, in which we talked about the 7 bodies, when we begin to practice suprasex and instead of pouring out our sexual energy, we begin to use it wisely, making it ascend through our spine, we will begin. First, to regenerate our physical and vital bodies, which are now degenerated and in a lunar state, and we will turn them into solar bodies. And then, we will begin to create our astral, mental, and causal solar bodies, of which we have only a principle, or embryo. And when we have those bodies already created, we will be able to move consciously and voluntarily in the superior dimensions. We will do this on the so-called first mountain of initiation. When we create these bodies, we reach a point, in the fifth initiation, during the creation of the body of will or causal body, where we will have to make a very important decision. There, we will face the ultimate test, where the guardian of the world of will make us choose between the direct path and the path of nirvana. Taking the path to nirvana would mean that our inner advancement will stop up to that point. We will be left with all the powers and faculties that we have acquired up to that point, and we will live in a state of happiness and abundance for hundreds or thousands of years. But, when that cycle ends, we will have to restart the process again, to try to do the work again, because by taking that path, we stop moving towards our liberation. Unfortunately, 999 out of 1,000 initiates who reach that point choose the path of nirvana, thus betraying their intimate Christ. But if, on the contrary, we decide to take the direct path, which is the difficult and narrow path, which consists of more sacrifice and pain, but which is the only path that will take us to the Father and to merge with that great force which is the universal Christ, then we will create our human soul, and we will become true men. Then, the Son of Man, who is the Christ, will be able to be born in us. Since, if we do not previously become men, it is not possible for the Son of Man to be born. Having already manufactured our human soul, we will be able to unite with our divine soul, which is the Buddhic body. That union will be the so-called perfect matrimony. And that union between the human and the divine will result in the birth of the Christ within us. At that moment, we will live Christmas in our hearts. Because although Christ is born 1,000 times in Bethlehem, it is of no use if he is not born in our hearts as well. And even if he had died and risen on the third day from the dead, that is of no use if he doesn't die and rise again in us as well. The intimate Christ arises internally in the work related to the dissolution of the psychological self. Obviously, the inner Christ only appears at the peak moment of our intentional efforts and voluntary sufferings. The advent of the Christ fire is the most important event of our own life. When the Christ is born and develops in us, that Christic force takes over all our internal processes. That is to say, all our motor, mental, emotional, instinctive, and sexual processes will be managed by the Christic consciousness. Among the works that the intimate Christ comes to do in us is the elimination of the 7 causal selves, or main seeds of the ego, which, for example, in the Egyptian mysteries, was related to defeating the red demons of Seth, and in the Greek and Roman mysteries with the 12 labors of Hercules. Unquestionably, the intimate Christ is our profound interior Savior. The intimate Christ, the celestial fire, must be born in us, and is actually born when we have advanced enough in the psychological work. The dissolution of the causes of the ego would not be possible as long as the intimate Christ has not been born in us. The living and philosophical fire, the intimate Christ, is the fire of the fire, the pure of the pure. And the invitation is for us to do our inner work, to become bathed and purified by that celestial fire, and to become part of the cosmic Christ. Let's remember that the cosmic Christ is made up of all the individual Christs of a galaxy. Here we can see some examples of masters who have reached the level of Christs. And this has been today's topic. We invite you to reflect deeply on this, to reach an understanding, and be encouraged to interview one of these masters through astral projection to corroborate these teachings. Also remember that any questions you have, you can leave them in the comments, and we will be happy to answer them. I leave you with the invitation to the next conference. A very interesting conference, in which we will study another of the 48 laws that govern this world, the law of the pendulum. In that topic we will learn how this law works, and we will learn how to transcend it to reach the truth about anything. Don't miss it. Until next time.